We're joined now by the Director of the Center for Democracy and Development, Dr. Dauda Garuba. Thank you for joining us on Newsnight.
Thanks for having me.
Well, I mean, no better person to be helping us understand this, especially, I mean, you're coming from the Center for Democracy. Let's start from that note. Well, they would say protests and dissent, hallmarks of democracy. With what has gone on in the last few days, about 6 days or so, would you say that indeed, you know, the way the protesters have carried on and the way that government on its part has responded to the calls for good governance, do they further deepen democracy? Or would you say democracy has been wounded in the last few days, considering the seemingly forceful manner that the protesters were pushed back?
Thank you for having me. There are obviously diverse directions from which people are assessing the current crisis. Yeah, at the beginning of this, even just the beginning, as the Director of Center for Democracy and Development, I made a press release with respect to what the protest was about. It is the democratic and legitimate rights of Nigerians to express how they feel. And this is not applicable to Nigeria. It's applicable generally to countries that have subscribed to democratic principles. So in that context, I personally do not feel that citizens were not acting right by expressing what they feel. So protest is part of the ingredients in deepening democracy. But again, we also were opposed to any preconceived violence as is eventually happening in some other countries. But I think underlying the issue of hunger is not something that any government should take lightly, given the fact that food is a pathological need of any human being. So if, as often said, a hungry man is an angry man. And I also think that rather than take this issue on the superficial value in terms of what it has turned out with particular respect to violence, the government had the opportunity to actually nip these issues in the bud. And by the time we had the president's statement a few days ago, I expected that the president would have done better by addressing the key issues that were actually resulted in the protest, which we are not seeing.
Which we're not seeing. We'll try and see if we can unpack that with you. That's why you're here. Now it brings us back to the issues of the issue of policies and programs. Looking back in the last 1 year of the administration and at that point when the president spoke, are there any programs or policies you think that the government should have been able to tweak to better the situation of Nigerians, or are there programs that they can just easily introduce going by your research?
Yes, obviously the government, I mean, all year round, and not also specific to this particular one, have most of the time pay lip service to agricultural development policies. We've seen agricultural policy pursued from the point of view of distribution of fertilizer. We've seen seedlings being distributed. We've had situations, I think on a more advanced note these days, we have like every January now prepared to at least educate farmers on when to start farming and how the rains are going to, the rain patterns you expect in a year. But I strongly also think that more fundamental to the challenges we have with agriculture in Nigeria now is the insecurity problem. People are ready to go to farm, but there is no security to, enable these people to actually go and concentrate and do their work in the farms. So if we want to move a step further, we need to do something very drastic in the area of education, in the area of insecurity that we currently have in this country. If we are not doing that, I'm not sure that we are going to achieve much. But also, what we could also possibly do is it's also time we also begin to embrace agriculture, even in our own urban area or even city centers. We shouldn't allow spaces to fallow without actually planting something in order to be able to, even if it requires getting vegetables you need in the house. We need all these things, and all hands should be on deck in promoting agriculture so that we can get beyond there. I also think that we need much investment in agriculture on the mechanical side, because a lot of work we are doing with tools and cutlasses that may not actually feed the growing population that we currently we have as a country.
Well, that is if you narrow it down to the issue of agriculture. But there's so many other policies, that government can come up with, both in the, short, medium, and long term, to deal with, some of these challenges that, Nigerians face. Alongside that, a lot of people would say there's a need for human capital development, because without that, if you build roads and the people are not educated, they're not healthy and what have you, it amounts to nothing. Let's look at, overall, some of those policies that would really make the difference in the long term and in the immediate.
Yeah, we also, for instance, beyond just even the agriculture, we need to also cultivate a sense of processing even the food that we manufacture, that we produce in this country. All season round, you find at times when we have a lot of waste from what we even produce. So we need to have policies around equipment, developing or manufacturing the necessary equipment for food processing. We need to have things around marketing boards. And of course, the president campaigned on this issue of marketing boards, so that we can take maximum benefit of or advantage of what we currently have in the country with respect to how come at a particular point in the year you are able to buy things very cheap, and even some of these cultivated crops are going waste, and at some particular point in the year you don't have anything to offer at all. So these are areas around which we can build our policies around. We also need to do something around processing, and if you do something in the processing by way of putting in place the necessary, what do I call it now, value chain of all this, then you create opportunity where farmers on their own will also be
Garuba, it looks like you're a farmer, because you're narrowing this down to agriculture, and I'm keen on moving away from that, as much as agriculture is absolutely important. But just in a way that government will not have this knee-jerk approach to resolving some of this or meeting some of the demands of Nigerians. What are the more far-reaching, policies that could be put in place?
We currently don't have loan opportunities for people to engage in what is required. A lot of ideas are there. Nigerians are very, very enterprising in terms of what they need to do in advancing the economy. The economy is totally at a point you want to call deadlock. Several stuff have been done. We have an economic management team that is supposed to help, help the government with policy that will elevate what is happening in this country, but all is not happening. What is it exactly that makes it impossible for even a civil servant to earn a living wage? And if you're going to need money, whether you talk about agriculture or survival as an issue, because I mentioned the food security as a survival issue. It's a pathological, physiological needs that must be addressed in this country if we are to outlive the current problem we call hunger.
Hopefully, government can make agriculture sexy for, the teeming population of Nigerian youth. Dr. Dauda Garuba, Director, Center for Democracy and Development, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.